This is Money, Motivation, and Mike, and I am your host, Michael Wainwright, in charge of all the controls, the audio engineer, Jason Wright. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip and find all of our content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that Jason can notify you of all of our new content, which comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. And speaking of our viewers and listeners, Jason, we're very fortunate and very blessed that we continue to hit all-time numbers week after week after week. We have hit another milestone this week by going over 80,000 subscribers. We're at 80,669 YouTube subscribers as of this moment right now. Over the last 28 days, we've had 41,700 views, and over 10,000 of those views subscribe to our station, our show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 5,503 views just in the last 48 hours. I would say that is monumental success, and the success of this show is driven by the viewing and listening audience. And we are very, very happy, proud that you have come along for the ride as we are going down the railroad track here on year number 3. All right, before we get into today's topic, and I've already kind of have given you what today's topic is, which is something that we deal with every 4 years, and that is the Electoral College, the way we elect a president of the United States of America and the way a lot of countries used to do that. But first, for you job seekers, and this is straight off LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the business network, online business network, that a lot of people go to, a lot of businesses go to find their recruits. In this particular article, Melanie Mitchell Whistler, career coach, did a survey. Her first comments, and these are the research that she's done. And then she asked a question, and I'll get into that too. Approximately 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn to vet candidates during the hiring process, and about 87% of recruiters regularly check candidates' LinkedIn profiles as part of their evaluation. LinkedIn has become a critical tool for recruiters to find and access potential hires, which is why having an optimized profile is essential to job seekers. I've used LinkedIn in business, and I have went on LinkedIn, and I have found candidates that have went to work in our different businesses adventures. I can also tell you this, banks, when you're making loans, banks are going to LinkedIn to check on all of the information that you're posting online as well. So Miss Melanie gave a question, a survey, and here it is. Should job seekers be judged on their social media profiles and online presence when applying for jobs? Jason, yes or no?
Yes, I think so.
I think so as well. We are in the minority. 37% said yes, 60% no, and you have 3% other. I believe that the social network shows exactly 99.99% of who a person really is.
Yeah.
They want to get on there and badger and gripe and complain and argue. That's probably what they do in real life. Probably what they do in their houses. It's probably what they do in their jobs. That's just my 2 bids worth. And like I say, you and I are in the minority on this particular question. So moving right along, Electoral College, but you might want to keep those profiles up to date whenever you are looking and seeking a new profession or new job, because apparently 94% does look into this, recruiters. The Electoral College, first of all, let me tell you, when I was in college, and that's not the college we're talking about here, I did a paper. I did wouldn't call it a thesis because I didn't have to write a thesis, but I did a major major project on recruiting of the Electoral College and what it is, what it's meant, and where we are, etc. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people just associate the Electoral College with electing the President of the United States of America. But that's not totally the case. An Electoral College is a body whose only task is to elect a candidate to a particular office, not just the office of the United States of America. It is mostly used in the political context for a constitutional body that appoints a head of state or government, and sometimes the upper parliamentary chamber in a democracy. Its members, called electors, are either elected by the people for this purpose or by certain entities or social organizations. Now, let me give you some examples of this. And the most popular electoral college is the United States Electoral College. The United States Electoral College is the only remaining electoral college in democracies where an executive president, the head of a state, who is also the head of the government, is indirectly elected via an electoral college. The other democracies that use an electoral college for these elections switched to direct elections in the 19th and 20th centuries. That's most. I want to give you the times here of when these other countries went away. The Electoral College is fundamental to American federalism in that it requires candidates for president to appeal to voters in all states or a substantial portion of the states rather than only those with large populations, which might hold greater power in elections based on a simple majority. Now, I don't know that I totally agree with that, and I'm going to give you some examples why here momentarily with just 5 states. But it's belief that the Electoral College makes candidates go out and have a presence in all or the majority of the states and not just in the high areas. And I'd be curious, and I didn't do this before the show, but if you went into the metropolitan areas of New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, and I'll even say the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, maybe even Atlanta. Those are some of the larger cities in the United States of America. How many of those would you just have to carry in? Could you spend all your time in New York City and affect enough voters to vote for you to win a popular election? Something we may look into sometime in the near future. Because if you just had to go to those five particular areas, then you wouldn't have to go to Oklahoma City. You would not have to go to Kennebunkport, Maine, and some of the smaller places that you would need to go to. Okay. Since 1800, Jason, over 700 proposals to reform or eliminate the system has been introduced to Congress, the Electoral College. 700 proposals since 1800, 200 plus years ago. And remember, Constitution was just went into play in 1776. So 24 years later, they're already trying to change the Electoral College. And it has survived, well, in this particular case, 224 years since we started having proposals. Proponents of these proposals argued that the Electoral College system does not provide for direct democratic election, affords less populous states an advantage, and allows a candidate to win the presidency without winning the most votes, the popular votes. And we've discussed on this show that just happened 20 plus years ago with George Bush #2, George W., and Al Gore. Al Gore had the most votes. And I don't remember the number, but it was very close in the election of 2016 as well. None of these proposals has received the approval of two-thirds of Congress and 3/4 of the states required to amend the Constitution. So, 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states are required to amend the Constitution. America has by far the most difficult Constitution to amend, which is why reform efforts have only stalled in America. Makes sense. But I did not know that the states, 3/4 of the states, would have to. I mean, how are you going to get to that, Jason? 37 and a half. Now, think about this. 37 and a half of the states would have to vote to amend the Constitution on this Electoral College. And Maine and Nebraska are split into districts. As a matter of fact, Nebraska has 3 districts, and all 3 of those districts could vote in a different way and not have to carry the whole state. So you could come up with 37 and a half states is what I'm pointing out here. You don't have to have 38. You could have 37 and a half. That's intriguing. Maine has 2 electoral votes that's divided into 2 districts. You could have one go one way and one go the other. And you've got your 37 and a half states. How about that? Mm-hmm. Criticism. More resolutions have been submitted than ever before just in the last couple of decades. Now, the latest countries, we're the only democracy with the Electoral College. This is the latest countries to switch. And we're going to start over in Europe. Norway just switched, as they say, 1905, 120 years ago. France switched in 1965. Finland switched in 1994. Spain switched in 1939. The Republic of China had an electoral college till 1996. South Korea switched in 1987. South Africa switched in 1983. So, the Republic of China in 1996, coming on 30 years, 28 years right now, have switched from the Electoral College to a public popular vote. What do you think about that? I would have thought, and I did my research in 1988. That's the first time I did research on Electoral College. And of course, I have done some pretty extensive research over the last 7 days. I would not have thought that the closest country to the United States of America to carry an electoral college to elect their president would be the Republic of China in 1996. So then I go over here and I start looking at the electoral votes. We mentioned the total of electoral votes in a previous show. How many people do you think in the United States of America know how many electoral votes there are in total?
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah.
Less than 20%.
I think a lot more people know what you need to get the win.
The 270. The 270.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know what the total vote is.
Yes. And for those of you counting at home, there's 538 votes. Hey, you go divide that by 2, Jason. That's 269 per candidate, not including a third party or the green group or whatever it is that could get one. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, there could be a tie. We'll get to that momentarily. So I went back and I started looking at these numbers over the course of time. And this is after we get out of the original 13 colonies, because back in those days, that's all there was. But as you get into the 19th century, let's just say 1900 forward, what do you think most of your presidential and vice presidential candidates have came from? The states with the most electoral votes. You sit here and do a handful of of presidential and vice presidential candidates on both sides, win or lose, that are from California and Texas. You got to have 270 votes to become the president of the United States. California, as present, has the most in the union at 54 electoral votes. Texas has 40. They're second. Would you believe Florida is third with 30? Did you know that?
I didn't.
I didn't either. I would have thought it was New York. Florida has 30 votes, electoral votes. New York has 28. And then the state that seems like we've been spending a ton of time on over the last couple of elections, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania pops in at 19. So now, fortunately for those of you who think every vote matters, every vote counts, then you'll be happy to know this. California and Texas almost always have voted opposite of each other. There's been some times, I know we went over some of this when what Reagan did back in those days and so forth and so on. But with 54 and 40, 94 votes in two states, that carried you a long ways. But most of the time, those two states vote for different parties. So that divide kind of splits each other out, even though 14 electoral votes is a big number. But now, back to them numbers I gave you all ago, or those 5 states of California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania. Did you know, Jason, that totals up to 171 electoral votes in 5 states? If you can carry those 5 states of the 50 states we have, you are less than 100 electoral votes away from become president of the United States. Now, that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
Which that in itself is an argument against the Electoral College. They say the Electoral College puts candidates in most of the states. I'd like to know how many times the current candidates have been to Wyoming. Wyoming has 3 votes. North Dakota, South Dakota, 3 votes. Maine, only 2 votes, as we discussed. Vermont, 3 votes. Delaware, 3 votes. And, excuse me, I've been saying the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia. District of Columbia has 3 votes. Sorry, forgot about y'all. Idaho, 4. West Virginia, 4. How much time do you think the candidates over the last 25 years, 24 years, have spent in these smaller states? I'm going to say not very much time at all. I bet we have candidates that have never been to Wyoming, United States of America, in their life, let alone when they're running for office. And with 5 states, you can have 171 electoral votes. And that doesn't even include Illinois, which is 19 as well. 19, Illinois, Pennsylvania both have 19. Those are your top 5, with Illinois and Pennsylvania being tied. And then a big swing state that we've been talking about now for several elections is Georgia. Georgia comes in at 16. North Carolina has 16. Another big state, Ohio, has 17. Ohio comes in at number 7 with 17. So your top 10 states, which is only 1/5 of the states in the union, can get you within a few votes of becoming president of the United States. So I said 5 states get you 171. All right? These next 5 states get you almost to 270 with 19, 17, 16, 16, and 15. Michigan has 15. That's the only one in those top 10 that I have not mentioned. Michigan gets you 15. All right, there's 50, 62, 68, 74, 83. Those 6 through 10 gets you 83 more electoral votes. That puts you at 254 in 10 states. How Is that fair to the other 40 states, plus the District of Columbia? Well, I don't think it is. Now, we'll continue on with this matter here momentarily. And you can get into why these candidates spend most of their time in these more populous states. Think about this. If you go hit Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, that's a big part of the United States, correct? That's a lot of mass of territory. A lot of traveling to go hit Lincoln, Nebraska, and then go to Bozeman, Montana, right? 11, 14, 17, 21 votes are all that's up in those 6 states. 21 votes. Now, why would any candidate spend all that time in those particular states for 21 votes? And you could even go up into the northeast corner of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Delaware, Rhode Island. What is that? That's 5 states. And that 7, 10 will get you 16 votes. I've just named off 11 states that could not get you 50 electoral votes, Jason. In different parts, you're basically in the Northwest, not including Washington and Oregon, but all those states butt right up to them, back to back to back, or up here in this corner of the Northeast, another 5 states. Those 10 states, those 11 states cannot get you 50 votes. The state of California can get you 54. Why would you spend any time in those states? I'm sitting here, I'm going to help you get elected to President of the United States in 2028. You've heard it here first. And I'm going to map out what we're going to do and the cities we're going to go to and where we're going to spend our donations of our money. I've just named off 11 states we won't be going to. Just want you to know right now. How is that democracy? How is that giving you John Q. Citizen in Montana, in the Glacier National Park, one of the great iconic places in the United States of America, thousands of frozen ice age, that everyone should have an opportunity to go see. The Mount Rushmore up in this same area, another great national park that everyone should go see. Their votes don't even count. And think about this. And we'll just take the state of Texas, who has voted Republican for a long time. And I know a lot of Democrats, know a lot of Republicans too. But what I'm saying is, of all those people I know of in Texas, all those people I know of on both sides of the aisle, if you will, in Oklahoma, lots of those people's votes don't count. Because when Texas goes to vote for a Democrat or Republican, they're going to cast their 40 votes for whoever had the majority in that state. See, we do the majorities in the states, Jason, but then we don't do the majority in the nation. I won the majority. See, think about this. And let's just say there's 100,000 people in California. You carry all 100,000. And let's say there is 100,000 people in Texas. And here, you only carry 51,000. But that's 2,000 more than your opponent, who only carried 49,000. So I have 151,000 of the 200,000 votes, and I got all the electoral votes. There's 49,000 people that did not there's 49,000 people who vote did not count towards the president of the United States election. Flip that. Flip that. California, you carry 49,000 of the vote and your opponent carries 51,000. He or she gets 54 electoral votes. We come down here to Texas and you carry all 100,000 votes. You only get 40 electoral votes. Right now, with 200,000 people casting their vote, you have the majority. You have 149,000 votes, and your opponent only has 51,000 votes, and your opponent is beating you by 14 electoral votes. I'm now remembering the paper I wrote back in the late 1980s when I was in college. And the Electoral College is a bunch of crap now, just like it was a bunch of crap then. Another issue with our government, in my opinion, just money, motivation, and Mike. And I'm going to get the other half of this deal here in a minute with what Jason's thoughts are. But I'm showing you how the Electoral College is out of date and not fair. I've got some best friends that are going to vote opposite of how I vote. And one of our votes is not going to matter when they go to certify this election. Your vote does not count. If you live in a particular state, then you just voted however that state votes, whether you voted that way or not. Thoughts, Jason? Go right ahead. Get on in here.
The only thing that, as a counterpoint, is 80% of Americans live in urban areas, 20% rural.
Rural.
And typically when you think of urban areas, which way do you think they vote?
I think they vote the urban areas.
Mm-hmm.
I think they vote conservative.
You don't think they're Democrats? Most cities are going to come out blue.
Okay, let's do it this way. According to the last several elections, it's been 50-50.
So I think that with the electoral colleges, they get a lot of the rural areas get more of a say. Because if you have, just say if majority of them are voting blue in the cities, that's where 80% of your population is. It's always going to go blue.
Well, and I understand that argument. And there was a time when I was supportive of the Electoral College. You know when that time was? When I didn't know what the Electoral College was.
Mm.
Because, once again, and Texas probably thinks they carry more clout. Texans do than anybody in the country. Except for California carries 25% plus more clout than it does Texas when it comes to electing a president. Florida feels that it has a gazillion retirees, and it does, with elder statesmen living in Florida, and they have lived a whole lot longer life than some people have in other places, as Florida is considered a retirement state. They have less votes than does Texas by 33%. And within 6 electoral votes, California has twice as many as does Florida. When was the last time you had a candidate talk about going to the state of Oklahoma to win that state?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma has 7 votes, 7 electoral votes. That is quite a few votes compared. Well, 11 of the states I just named off don't have that many votes, and they don't go to the state of Oklahoma, who has 7 votes. Kansas 6, Iowa 6, West Virginia 4, Utah 6, Nevada 6. There's another half a dozen states. Mississippi 6. Louisiana does have an Arkansas 6. I've just named off almost 20 states, Jason, that have less electoral votes than the state of Oklahoma. And you just said You don't know the last time a candidate went to Oklahoma. And you're right. I don't either. More of my point. Why do we not just go to the polls and cast our vote and every vote count? Because I stand here before you right now telling you that when you cast your vote, it does count in your state. But we're electing a president of the United States of America with 50 states in one district. And when you cast your vote and the votes at the Electoral College level are cast, not your vote, the vote that your state's going to vote, your vote may count and it may not.
Throw a little fact out there for you.
Please.
See how you feel about it with the if you go by the populist vote. 80% of Americans live in the east portion of the United States,
Where the U.S. all started.
Yeah.
Okay.
20% obviously to the west.
Probably just say Mississippi River.
Basically right down the center. So we're from the center point of U.S. 80% is to the east of that.
Okay.
So how does, with what you said earlier, these candidates, are they ever going to go to the west?
They're going to go to California, and they're going to stop off in Texas on the way.
Yeah, they're going to stop in Los Angeles.
Absolutely,
and that's it.
And they're going to go to San Francisco. They're going to get one in the north, one in the south.
Yeah,
just like they're going to go to Dallas, and then they're going to go to Houston.
Yeah, they're going to get a few percentage points out of that area.
Yes,
and that's pretty much it.
And probably when they go to Florida, which I know is East Coast, they're probably going to Tallahassee because that's where all the politicians are. And then you can go back to your actual districts. And it's kind of funny about Florida, and I'll let you finish your point, because if you remember, Broward County, the hanging Chad from the year 2000, ends up deciding the election.
Yeah.
With those particular electoral votes.
Yeah.
And if Gore had won those, he'd be the president. Bush won them, and he became the president. Over a month and a half later, by the way.
Yeah.
So continuing on with you're talking about 80% of the people live on the East Coast.
Well, from the dividing line, essentially divide the United States in half, east and west. 80% live to the east.
And you can leave the east and go hit Texas and California and have 40% of the votes you need to become president of the United States. So, well, there is definitely arguments on both sides of the aisle. And obviously, we put this Electoral College into place in 1776, and it still exists to this day. And 24 years after the Constitution of the United States of America was passed, we have been trying to change it ever since. Unsuccessful. Or maybe successful. Apparently it's successful because it's still what it is. Now, it is the only election where not every vote counts. And it is the most important election in the world. The most powerful individual in the world sits in Washington, D.C., United States of America. And as we've already talked about, the rest of the world does it another way. Maybe that's why we're so smart, because we do it our way. Now, any other thoughts on that before I move along, Jason?
32% of Americans admit that they follow politics.
Okay.
So that means the other, 70 or 68%?
68.
What are they doing? Are they just voting what?
I think they follow the media. Maybe, well, I eat lunch with this guy every day.
Yeah.
He makes sense. I'll just vote the way he does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't like it.
Yeah.
But that old 80-20 rule that we talk about on this show quite often, because I do believe it. I do believe it works, or it's a live thing, and the law of averages always take over. That would tell me that 68% of America is uninformed. And of that 32%, half of them don't know the full story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
I think there's a great influence on the outcome of the election from uninformed voters.
All right. That is the case.
Yeah.
But for those people who follow American politics every day, they get all of their information from the media. And I believe you want to get involved in Constitution and you want these politicians to do the right thing, put rules and regulations, put law in place that you don't cover any politics till the election's over. You do not get an opportunity to persuade. See, just like right here on this show right here, Money, Motivation, and Mike, the YouTubers are in charge of our content to a degree, because if we go into things that they do not want to put out there, our show doesn't get publicized. So if we get on here and we start hardcore supporting a candidate that our 80,000+ subscribers and not even including podcasters, listeners listen to, we can persuade an election to a small degree, because those 80,000 will go tell somebody. Now we got 160,000, and on and on and on. Now, the government has a lot. I know free speech and the Second Amendment and all that, but the government has a lot of control over what goes on, not only in this country, but in this world. So until you shut down CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, on and on and on, we're going to keep getting what we got. And whatever candidate can love up to the networks the most has the best chance to win. That's the way I really feel, whether it's Electoral College or a popular vote or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way.
I think the media has way too much say in politics.
They shouldn't have any say.
Yeah.
But they don't report news. They make news.
Right.
And that's just not right. Now, as we come to this conclusion, one question, and we're going to start that off on the next episode of Money, Motivation, and Mike, which is because we're 2 weeks out on a presidential election.
Yeah.
What if the Electoral College vote is tied? We'll get into that on the next episode, because, Jason, I'm telling you, we've never had it. We have not had a third party make a difference on the electoral side since 1968. Ross Perot changed an election in 1992 with Bush #1 and Clinton. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Got 20 million votes. But I think we're closer to a lot of things, including a potential tie in the Electoral College, which is another reason the Electoral College is not my favorite. Because if you got 75 million people, 150 million people, both candidates got close to 70 million votes last time, didn't they? In 2020?
Record numbers.
Yes. And I think it was in the 70 million. So 140, 150 million people vote. The slim and none on that being a tie. Because you got 150 million opportunities. That didn't even include the people who didn't vote that might show up this time. And I know some have died off and some won't show. But when you're only talking about 538 votes.
And some who have dead will vote too.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. But when you only have 538 votes, your proposition and your percentages of having a tie drastically increase versus 150 million votes. Money, Motivation, and Mike continues to bring you topics that I believe are very, very informative, maybe sometimes even entertaining to you. And our listening audience seems to like it because they continue to show up and listen to what we've got to say. Thank you very much for that. Once again, contact us at info@mx3.vip. I would love to hear over the next week from our, 32% of the voters or the educated voters in this world. Is that what you said a while ago?
Yes.
Maybe we'll even hear from them, some of that 68% on whether you like the Electoral College or not. Find us on YouTube, youtube.com/MX3podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, which comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. So for all of those, Jason, up for election here in the next couple of weeks, including the most important job in the history of the world, continue to live your life the right way.